welcome to Wool Meets World, the channel where I explore everything yarny and beyond. This is episode 2 of the Wool Meets World podcast. If you're new here, my name is Marci. I'm a serial knitter and maker from New York City. I love doing all sorts of crafts, playing with all sorts of medium, including knitting, crochet, and I'm building up my sewing skills by working on my me-made wardrobe. I also love to consume media, whether that's books, TV shows and movies, or podcasts. So those are some of the things that you are going to hear about in today's episode. First, let me just start off with a very big thank you to anyone who watched episode 1, who liked, commented, subscribed, or even found me on Instagram. The encouragement is so appreciated. It can be really intimidating to put yourself out there, and ultimately I have no idea whether I'm just talking to myself alone in my room. So I really appreciate the support, and if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. The sweater that I'm wearing is called Poet. It's by Sari Nordland, and I knit it up in Woolberry Fiber Co. in their Berry Merino base, and it is the colorway Rustic. It might be coming off a little bit like a burgundy on camera perhaps, but it is a burnt red with a bit of a brown undertone. And all the details are on my project page, but just quickly, the main modification that I made was reducing the amount of decreases on the sleeve and lengthening the sleeve a bit. I think the pattern is a 3/4 length sleeve, and I lengthened it to about bracelet length and reduced the amount of ribbing. I only have about 2 inches of ribbing here. So with that, let's get into our works in progress. So it's mid-May, and I've been having a much better time of it than I was having in April, although I've still been really busy and I haven't spent as much time in my craft room as I would have liked, but I'm still getting a lot of good progress going on my works in progress. I have 3 of them to share. Forgive me while I look off to the side at my notes on my laptop here. The first project that I have to share is Galax by Andrea Gahn Knits. And it is a tank top worked from the bottom up. And I've gotten about 3 inches on it since I cast on at the beginning of May. There is no ribbing here, so it's going to have a little bit of a rolled hem. And then the front and back are pretty much identical with this Estonian lace pattern. And then the sides, most of the front and the sides are stockinette. I am using this indigo dye yarn that I got from Rhinebeck. I think I showed it last time. And I said that it was actually linen because I remembered the yarn being, or I thought I remembered the yarn being linen when I picked it up. And of course the label is in Japanese, so I'm not able to read it, but I used my brain. I remembered that we actually have technology that can help with this, and I used the Translate app on my phone to translate it, and what do you know, it said cotton on it and not linen. So that kind of changes the structure of the pattern a little bit. It's going to have less drape than I wanted because cotton as opposed to linen is a little bit more structured. But otherwise, it's pretty similar. It's breathable. It's perfect for summer, nice and airy, and it is super soft and very durable. So that's good. But like I said, the pattern is going to have a little bit more structure than I wanted, which is okay. I think it'll still fit me really nicely. And I think the designer gauge is 7 stitches per inch, and I have 6 inches per inch for my gauge. So I am doing a size B, which is going to get me a size 38 at the bust. And that is just going to give me no ease at all. It is just going to skim my body pretty perfectly. Don't unsubscribe for me saying this, but I really like swatching. I really like swatching for sweaters because I think, or sweaters and tops, because I think that it really gives me an idea of how the yarn's going to behave, and it of course will help me figure out a size. I don't always do a really big swatch. Sometimes I just do a small little 2x2 square just so that I know what my gauge is going to be and I can play around with it and make adjustments. I am so glad I swatched for this, however, because the yarn, whether it be linen or cotton, has no elasticity to it whatsoever. So doing this lace pattern was a little tough at first. It has these nups. Let's see, there's one right there. It has these nups, which is, I learned, essentially an Estonian, like, what is the word for it? Estonian bobble. And it was really difficult to do it in this yarn. The yarn has no elasticity to it, and basically you have to make 7 loops on your needle, and then on the next round, you go and you decrease those all together. And I was having such a hard time pulling my working yarn through all 7 loops that I was like literally twisting my wrists like this and trying to stretch those loops out, even though you're instructed to make them really big. It just wasn't happening. It was too much on my wrist. So with a little research, I realized that you can do a nup with a crochet hook. And I am using, what is this? This is a size B crochet hook, I think, and it's making it a lot easier for me. I had to adjust myself a little bit. However, I was knitting this swatch before in English style, and that's my usually preferred way to knit because that's how I learned how to do it. But I can also do continental, and I also crochet right-handed. So I needed to switch to continental because of how I orientate my crochet hook. I have no idea how to do it on the left. That's just not how I learned. So I switched to knitting continental for this, and I'm glad I did because I'm also finding pulling the loops up for the nup to be much easier continental than it was for me doing it in English style. For some reason, when you're doing it in continental, it's easier to pull a length of yarn out, and then it's easier to hold a yarn over bigger than what you would doing English style, or at least for me it was. So that is the big modification that I'm making so far on this. And so because I'm using a crochet hook, I actually have to pull the final loop through to close off those 7 stitches in the same round that I'm doing the nup in. So on the next round where the instructions say, decrease 7 stitches, I am just, knitting stockinette even, and that is working for me great so far. The other modification besides how I'm doing the noops is I am making it slightly longer. It's a cropped V-neck tank, and rather than cropping it, I'm just going to make it a little bit longer and go waist length. So it's going to take me a little bit longer to do it, but I think it'll be worth it. And I just also want to show my fun little summery stitch marker that I am using. This is a group of citrus fruits from Hello Lavender, and it comes with coordinating markers, which I don't have in here. I'm just using little Cocoa Knits markers because I needed more than 3. And this are my cute little sheep stitch stoppers. Ooh, that's a tongue twister. And they are from Fox and Pine Stitches. I believe you can get them online. I get these at my local yarn store. So that is Galax, and that's gonna kind of be my main project once I finish this next whip that I have. And that, I showed this on the last episode, so I'm gonna go quickly through these. But these are my socks that I am knitting. If I can get all this away. These are my Rainbow Bright socks. That's what I'm calling them. They don't have any pattern to them. I'm just making up the pattern as I go along. It's just your basic vanilla sock, and I have the pattern recipe that I've just made up for myself from knitting so many socks. I know what fits my feet. I have that in my project page. But basically I started down here at the toe with 24 stitches. I increased until I had 64 stitches. And I was knitting 64 stitches all the way up until I got to the heel. I stopped about 2 inches before the edge of my foot, just like put a ruler right up against your foot. 2 inches before that, you can start the heel. This is the Shadow Wrap heel. It's a short row heel. Looks pretty similar on both sides. And then for the first time like ever in my sock making career here, I am knitting mid-calf socks. And like I said, I'm not doing any sort of pattern for this. I just know that generally the, kind of shorty socks that I make fit well with 64 stitches, but I have a rather muscular calf, and since these are going up, you know, to mid-calf, I decided to do some increases. So I believe since I last showed these off, I've done about like 8.5 inches of stockinette here, and about 5.5 inches up, I have my little stitch markers to tell me, about 5.5 inches up, I did increase, and then an inch later I did more increases. So now I have 72 stitches here to just accommodate for my calf. That's a little bit bigger than the bottom of my leg. And I'm calling these my Rainbow Bright socks because this is a super cute bright rainbow, and it is reminding me of the 1980s cartoon Rainbow Bright. A little girl wears these like rainbow knee-high socks. And the color that I am using here is from Desert Vista Dye Works. And it's a 75-25 merino nylon, and the colorway is Summer Rainbow. Such a fun, bright color. I love the way it's knitting up. The white contrast that I am doing is just Cascade 220, their fingering weight version of that, and I've done the toes, heels, and now I'm doing the cuffs in that, and I just have done one row of stockinette in the white to get myself started off, and now I am going to be switching to ribbing and finishing these hopefully very soon. This is the longest time I've ever spent knitting a pair of socks. I just had no time in April, and I've been getting a lot of TV time with these in May, but they're pretty high, much higher than I normally wear. So it is taking me forever, and hopefully this will be a finished object the next time I see you. And then the last project that I have is a sewing project. This is the Seamwork Marlow top, and it is a short sleeve V-neck button-up top, and I am sewing it in a cotton shirting that I got from Joann's. It's navy with these gold like leaf pattern on it. And the shirt is really nice and soft. It's cotton, so it's got a little bit of structure to it. It is even like a little bit like tacky. Like when you put it on, it doesn't drape over your body. It kind of sticks a little bit. And the fabric itself was pretty inexpensive from Joann's. I'm just, you know, starting to learn how to sew. So this is perfectly fine for me. This is my second garment where I'm doing a V-neck, and I'm finding it's just a little bit difficult to get like a really nice crisp point at the corner there, but I'm hoping to keep, you know, working on that. And I wanted to have this finished by now, but I just have not been in my sewing room for like a week now because I just haven't had time. And I really hope to get this done because, again, summer is coming, even though it is quite cool now. Soon I will be able to wear this, I hope, with a pair of like linen pants I have or a skirt that I have that'll look really nice with it. So I'm very excited to finish this, and I already have my next sewing project in the mind there. I have it going in my mind. And so that's what I have on the needles and on my sewing table right now. I have started and finished a project since I last saw you. Let's talk about that in our finished objects. As I said, I've started and finished a project already since I last saw you, and that is because I had jury duty at the beginning of the month. I was kind of like fantasizing that I was going to take my Rainbow Bright socks to jury duty and like get a whole bunch done and like have that all finished when a friend of mine pointed out that I probably wouldn't be able to take those tiny little size 1 needles into a courthouse. So they might be like mistaken for weapons, and they might make me throw them away. And that was sound advice. If you live in New York State, I talked to the courthouse security, and they said some courts will let you in and some won't, so it is better to ask. So rather than take the chance of having my socks thrown away, I started a tiny little crochet project, which was so fun. And these are them right here. This is the Crochet Yarn Cozy Lite and the Crochet Mini Yarn Cozy from Nitty Natty. And they are exactly what I said. They are yarn cozies to keep your skeins nice and organized. Last episode, I kept talking about my messy balls, which was quite funny when I watched it back. What I was referring to was my cakes of yarn that kind of get all discombobulated as you pull from them. They start to collapse a little bit and the yarn just gets disorganized and all over the place. I do have plenty of yarn cozies here made out of fabric that I never use. I keep them in here with my project bags. For some reason, I never pull them out, but since I needed a quick, fun project for a couple days of jury duty, I decided maybe I would use them more if the yarn cozies were made out of some special scraps. So these are some scraps that I have from different finished projects. This pink is from Woolberry Fiber Co. and it was a collective colorway if you were in her membership for February one year. And then the blue is from Cozy Colorworks, and it's I think it's just called Teal is the colorway name, I think. And they're just scraps that I have left over from other projects. And I made, this one is the big one. I think this is the Crochet Yarn Cozy Lite, which will hold a full-size skein of 100 gram fingering weight yarn. And then this is the Crochet Mini Yarn Cozy, which this is the 20 gram one. This will hold a 20 gram skein of fingering weight yarn. And then there's also a 50 gram version that you can make from the same pattern. The pattern comes either separate or you can buy it in a bundle, which I did. And now I have these cute little coordinating yarn cozies that I can use when I do my next sock set, which since it's taking me so long to knit my Rainbow Bright socks, I don't know if I'll be making a sock in the next two projects, but when I do, these are ready for me. And again, since April was so crazy for me and May has been just a little bit more of the same, the only other project that I have been able to finish is a mystery gnome. If you have not had all the clues yet, or if you haven't finished or you don't want to know anything about the the Gnome News is Good News mystery gnome along from Imagine Landscapes, turn away, fast forward to the next segment. This is the last finished object that I'm going to show, so you can go ahead to the next segment if you don't want to know. If you do want to know, here it is. This is Gnome News is Good News from Imagine Landscapes. It is her latest mystery gnome pattern and the first one that is done in self-striping yarn. And the self-striping yarn here that I used is Nomadic Yarns in the colorway Long Winter's Nap. It is in the Tweedy base, so you can see that there's nice tweed to it. And then the contrasting yarn that I used for the hat, the shoes, and then just hidden here on the base is from Avalon Springs Farms, and it is in their Pendragon base, and it is just a like one-off mini skein that I got at Rhinebeck this year. And I think it's so cute. I love making Sarah's gnomes. I think they're so fun. They're so full of whimsy. And it's just a fun little project to do. And it's fun to participate in some of these gnome-alongs where everyone's making the same thing and you get to see everybody's creativity on display. I love gnomes for a couple reasons, because A, they're super small, they're quick. You can like practice different techniques on them if you have never done them before, and then you get to like play around with color with like zero consequences, because who cares if the contrast is kind of off or these two colors don't look good together. It's a gnome. Who cares? I love the way that this Long Winter's Nap colorway turned out with this really bright pink. I have some yarn left over of both, so maybe I'll do some shorty socks to match my gnome. The other thing I practiced was how to do a provisional cast on using the barber cords rather than crocheting in a different yarn and then having to like unravel that. I don't know why, for me, the yarn always gets stuck. Maybe it's just the fiber that I'm picking. It's not smooth and it gets stuck to my working yarn. So I actually did this, and this is knit this way actually, and then you graft the two parts together right here. So right here is where I did my provisional cast on with the barber cords. It was very easy. I just stuck my barber cord to my needle. You can do, I guess, your regular long tail cast on. I did a backwards loop cast on, and then you literally just leave the live stitches hanging out there on the barber cord when you want to pick them up again. stick your needle into it and zip it right through. The thing that I learned is that you should probably do the cast on a little bit looser than you would on without the barber cord, because when I went to go graft these two together with the Kitchener stitch, it was very tight, and I found myself wishing that I had just left a little bit more slack on that cast on, but otherwise it turned out great. It was very easy and something that I could try on a bigger, more consequential project in the future. So I really had fun making this, and it's sitting on my shelf with my other gnomes, and I love it. So let's move on to media matters. So let's talk about some of the media that I've been consuming, and the one thing that I've been doing is spending a lot of time in front of the TV. In fact, my socks that I'm working on, my Rainbow Bright socks, should be called Ode to Stockinette because they have just been great for all the time I've been spending in front of the TV. I have not been watching too many TV shows because my husband and I are replaying the Metal Gear Solid series on PlayStation, and I just have to say that that series is fantastic if you are a knitter, especially parts 1 and 2, because the cutscenes are so long that you can get plenty of rounds in if you were actually using the controller and playing the game yourself. But I haven't been watching any series, but I have caught up with 2 TV shows that have made me so excited as a knitter. The first show is Conan O'Brien Must Go. I'm a big Conan O'Brien fan. I've seen him in person. I've watched his NBC show as well as his TBS one. My husband and I are often listening to his podcast together. And this first episode of Conan O'Brien Must Go was so fun. It's a really funny subversion of the travel show series that you have like on CNN or on HBO with Anthony Bourdain or Stanley Tucci. And I always really enjoyed Conan's travel shows when he was on TBS. He always went to places that Americans, may not go to, such as Cuba. And I always love those episodes. And this first episode of Conan O'Brien Must Go is so funny. He goes to Norway and sits in with a knitting circle. And when I saw that, I literally screamed and nearly jumped out of my chair. It was so funny, so exciting. Go check out that episode. It's not too far into the series if you don't know Conan O'Brien, but just he learns how to knit, and the thing that he decides to make is great. It's so funny. The second TV show that I've been trying to keep up with is Jeopardy Masters. I am a big Jeopardy fan. Love watching it. I've watched it for years, and I'm having so much fun on Jeopardy Masters because self-proclaimed big knitter Victoria Gross is a contestant. She's kicking butt. And it's so fun to root for a fellow knitter on a game show like that. The other things that I am reading / listening to are 2 books. Like I said, I love to listen to audiobooks while I'm sewing. I have not finished either of them because I've just had no time lately, but I've gotten pretty far. I'm probably about 75% of the way into Remarkably Bright Creatures, and that's by Shelby Van Pelt. And it follows 3 characters through a kind of difficult time in their lives, and one of them is a great Pacific octopus named Marcellus. He is so funny. The narration, let me just get this on my computer. The narration is done by Marin Ireland and Michael Urie, and I have to say the narration for Marcellus is hysterical. He is by far one of the best literary characters that I've come across recently, and it's just great. And the audiobook version is fantastic because he's really engaging with you, the listener. He's talking directly to you, and it's just something that I'm enjoying so much. And I think it's really interesting when a story kind of jumps through narration. You hear it through Marcellus's point of view, through Tova's point of view, and then through Cameron's point of view, and they're all really distinct characters. They're all very lonely. They're all looking for connection, and it's just a really great book that I am enjoying. I am holding myself back from racing through it so that it can just be my sewing book that I am listening to, and it'll encourage me to get back into the sewing room and finish off the Marlow top, because I really want to get to the end of this book. It's not super suspenseful or anything like that. There is a little kind of mystery element to it. Small trigger warning if you've known anyone that has passed unexpectedly, but otherwise it's pretty tame. It's just very interesting characterization, I would say, rather than a super gripping plot. I'm all in it for Marcellus. That is what is keeping me coming back to this audiobook. The second book that I am reading is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. Fawcett. And this is book 2 in the Emily Wilde series, the first one being Encyclopedia of Fairies, and it follows curmudgeonly Professor Emily Wilde as she goes through adventures in the fairy world. It's my first kind of foray into fairy stories. I've never really encountered that before. I'm much more of like a vampire witch kind of girly, but this book series is pretty fun. I'm enjoying book 2 a little bit more than I enjoyed book 1. Emily Wilde in the description is described as curmudgeonly, and she's very dry. She's kind of oblivious to what's going on around her, and her focus is really, with blinders on her research. And I feel like in book 2, she's much more open, she's a little bit more romantic, she's a little bit more likable in book 2. And I always find it interesting when a author takes a chance on giving you an unlikable character, an unlikable narrator, because it can be a gamble. It can be a gamble if you want to keep reading that. I was reading book 1 and had to kind of switch to audiobook on that because I was just kind of going very slowly through the reading process, and I find that if maybe something's not clicking with me while I'm reading it, switching to audiobook will help, and that absolutely happened with book 1. With book 2, I decided to read it, a physical copy of it, and it's actually kept me gripped. You get to the action much quicker, and it's very fun. It reminds me in a way of the book series Discovery of Witches, because it comes at the supernatural from an academic, scientific place. Emily is a professor of dryadology, which focuses on the study of fairies, and it's very much grounded in the real world with, these sort of scientific side trips into fairy. And even the way the book is presented to you, it's got footnotes as an academic paper would be. So I find that style really, really fun. Very interesting take on the supernatural kind of fantasy element. I'm not done with it. I'm also probably about 75% of the way, because I try to read about 15 minutes each night, either with my knitting or not. But I am having trouble getting my 15 minutes in every night, and so I'm going a little bit slow with it, but I am looking forward to getting to the end of the book. It's really picking up steam where I am now, and very unpredictable, a really fun little roller coaster of a cozy fantasy series. So that is it for episode 2 of the Wool Meets World podcast. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking with me, and I will see you on the next one.